Chapter 18. Mom stands in front of the open fridge for 3 whole minutes before she says, "Huh?" I'm at the table, pretending to do my homework. Dan left about an hour ago, saying he really had to get home to work on this project of his that was due tomorrow. Before he left, he helped me get Grieg upstairs and squeeze him under my bed. That, we decided, was the best place for him. My parents never have a reason to look under there, like they sometimes do my closet. We had a quick chat with the robot before covering him up with my bed sheets, and he seemed to understand that he had to be quiet while my parents were around. And maybe you're thinking I'm a crazy person for trying to talk reason to a robot, but you try having a guy like Grieg waltz into your life. You might start acting a little crazy too. What I told the robot was that my mom and dad might be mad and get rid of him if they found out that I had him. They'd done that with other gifts Grandpa K had given me, and promised to feed him plenty more comestibles if he could pull this off. Of course, I'd need to go and get some comestibles first, because the snack cabinet was totally empty, and so was the fridge. Which brings us back to the present moment, where my mom is still standing there, staring into the bare fridge, looking absolutely baffled, and I'm at the table, perspiring and getting pretty panicky. Mom says it again. "Huh. What's up?" I ask her, as casually as I can. I thought, did we have a bunch of food in here this morning, or am I losing my mind? Huh. There's nothing in there? Mom turns back to the fridge. Nope. She crouches down, angles her head, squints. Well, actually, nothing but a couple of radishes. I say. That's strange. Then I frown down at my open notebook. I pretend I'm concentrating on an extremely challenging math problem. I pretend I'm concentrating so hard that I can't even hear the huge record book worthy sigh that comes pouring out of my mom. But I do hear it. And what I'm ready to hear next is something along the lines of, "Ken, what in the world did you do with an entire refrigerator's worth of food?" Or, "Ken, this is coming straight out of your allowance." Or even, "Ken, go to your room and don't come out until 2039. But what I actually hear is the fridge sucking shut, and then Mom says, "I need a vacation." A second later, a stack of takeout menus lands on the table beside my notebook. "Looks like we're ordering," Mom says. "You pick." With that, she heads upstairs to get changed. Then I heave a sigh, this one of relief. Chapter 19. Whenever my parents let me decide where to order dinner from, I choose General Noodles. It's Chinese food, and honestly, not all that good. The place is also notorious for messing up orders. It's not uncommon for them to swap one beef dish with another, or to send over a carton of noodles when you clearly asked for rice. One time, I'm being serious, they delivered a sack of straight-up Italian food. We're talking ravioli and meatballs, eggplant parmesan, and those little cheesy fried balls of rice, too. They even brought a few cannoli for dessert. Why do I insist on ordering General Noodles? The chopsticks. That's right, because no matter how badly they mess up your order, they always give you an absurd number of the things. Even if they bring you manicotti instead of mushu pork, you can be sure they'll include a few dozen of the thin little paper envelope packages. It's like they think you're trying to feed a small army on $25 worth of food. But you're probably wondering, what could I possibly want with such a large quantity of mass-produced chopsticks? Well, you see, the balsa-like wood that your standard set of chopsticks is made of is thin and light and weak, but therefore flexible and portable, and capable of being broken down and discarded or hidden in no more than a couple of seconds. Like one time last summer when Dan and I built a catapult out of nothing but chopsticks and a handful of rubber bands. The thing was great. We hung on to it for several weeks, just testing it out. Then, on a super hot day in the middle of August, we set it up in Dan's neighbor's backyard, which is separated from his own backyard by a narrow strip of trees. We waited for Dan's older brother to wake up and open his window. Then we began our assault. We launched tennis balls and pieces of overripe fruit and even a couple water balloons up into the air and right into Dan's brother's bedroom, twisting the rubber bands based on the shape and weight of the to-be-launched object. The best part? Every time a projectile sailed through his open window, Dan's brother rushed over and leaned outside. But of course, he couldn't see who was attacking him. We were covered by the trees. That didn't stop him from screaming at us, though, from promising that he'd hunt us down and drag us up to his room and make us clean the smooshed peaches and pears off his walls and carpet. But later on, when Dan's brother searched Dan's room, all he could find were a bunch of broken chopsticks and some rubber bands. And Dan's brother, not having gotten the same share of the family's intelligence as his little brother, couldn't see a powerful, finely calibrated catapult in that pile of junk. All of which is to say that I'm eating a beef and broccoli dish for dinner that I most certainly did not order. But, along with the soggy veggies and chewy chunks of meat, I got 51 sets of chopsticks. I'm still unwrapping, splitting, and smoothing the splinters out of the things when my dad gets home. He pauses just past the kitchen doorway, sniffs the air, and says, "What'd we get?" "The Generals," I tell him. He says, "Gross." But he grabs a fork and a container of something from the counter and brings it upstairs with him, taking a few bites along the way. Chapter 20. I check on Grieg before going to bed. He's still there, right where Dan and I put him, laid out on the carpet beneath my bed, his flat face nearly pressed up against my mattress. I can tell the guy hasn't moved so much as an inch. I guess we gave him enough to eat. I floss, brush my teeth, stand there for a while in the bathroom doing nothing but wondering what I might be able to do with some dental floss and 102 thin, tapered lengths of balsa wood. Finally, I head to bed. I have some trouble falling asleep. Every 2 minutes, I lean down and check to make sure Grieg's still there. He always is. And after an hour or so of checking, I finally pass out. I dream. Not so surprisingly, I dream about Grieg. We're on a stage. I'm giving a presentation, telling a big audience about my world-revolutionizing robot. But then, when I go to show the eager crowd just how Grieg's going to revolutionize the world, the robot won't do a thing. All he does is say, "Please, more comestibles. Please, feed." I jerk awake, blink at the thick darkness that's hunkered down in my bedroom. As soon as my eyes adjust enough to see a bit, I decide to check under my bed for Grieg again. And thank God I do, because the robot, he's gone. Chapter 20. Grieg's in the kitchen. I turn the corner just as he's sticking the containers of leftover Chinese food into the little door of his torso. It makes my head spin just thinking about how much food the guy's already got packed inside of him. And he's still hungry. "Grieg!" I hiss. The robot pauses for a second. "I am Grieg," he says. Then he goes back to filling up his stomach. "Listen," I tell him. "You can't—" I don't know what to call it at first. All that crunching and churning. Then I realize what it most closely resembles and can only hope that Grieg understands what I'm saying. "You can't do any digesting right now, okay?" "Digesting," says Grieg. "After feeding comes digesting." "Right," I say, feeling relieved. "That. You can't do it right now. It's too loud. You'll wake up my parents." "Grieg can dispose." He doesn't say it like a question, but I can tell it is one by the way the robot's eyes blink patiently. And here's what I'm thinking. How bad can Grieg's disposal process be? When he crunches and churns the food and it's glass or plastic or paper packaging, it all disappears. Where it goes? I don't know, but it definitely goes. I'm thinking the guy will open a vent and let out some compressed air, or maybe it'll be a valve and some steam. Either way, it won't be too noisy. So I shrug. I say, "Sure, Grieg, dispose away." A small panel in the upside-down trapezoid that is the robot's pelvis slides aside, and out shoots a tiny brown-black cube. I barely see the thing. It soars across the kitchen in about 0.06 seconds, then crashes through the window above the sink. The shattering glass is as loud as a gunshot. Kitty instantly starts to squeal. And based on the series of sounds that follow, I can tell that the dog is now trying to squirm out from under the couch. 2 seconds later, I hear my dad call out, What in the heck was that? And then my mom, Ken? Grieg, meanwhile, has this to say. Disposal complete. Chapter 22. For a second, all I can do is stare at Grieg in confusion. Also, I admit, a little fear. After all, the guy just farted a speeding bullet. What if I happen to be standing right behind him? I don't get a chance to think this possibility through. I can hear my parents clambering down the stairs and know that if I, A, want to keep them from disposing of Grieg, and B, I want to avoid being grounded until I turn 28, I'd better get the robot out of sight fast. So I grab Grieg, drag him across the kitchen, open the cabinet of pots and pans, and shove him inside. He goes in willingly enough, retracting and bending his flexible limbs in order to squeeze his body beside and around and over the things. I get the cabinet door shut just as my parents are rounding the corner into the kitchen. Ken? My mom says. She sounds relieved and confused, and also maybe a little angry. Dad's looking from me to the shattered glass above the sink. Finally, his gaze settles back on me. Explain. At first, all I can do is stammer. I say. Then I say, I think I throw in a well and a so too, just for some variety. When at last I remember how to speak, I say, I was just standing here, Why? My dad interrupts. He glances at the clock on the oven. 2:33 in the morning. Water, I say. I wanted a glass of water, and then the window, it just all of a sudden, I'm interrupted again. But not this time by my dad. This time it's by a series of loud, bright crashes, the sounds of pots and pans spilling over one another. Chapter 23. Both Mom and Dad stomp across the kitchen toward the cabinet to investigate. Meaning, I'm done for. My parents are going to open that cabinet, meet Grieg, put two and two together, and lock me in my bedroom for the foreseeable future. But one of us, either me or Grieg, must have some kind of guardian angel looking out for us. That or the universe was just feeling bored and generous at 2:33 on a Friday morning. Because before Mom and Dad can reach the cabinet, there's yet another crash. This one comes from outside. And along with it, half a second after that, a crash of thunderclap rips apart the sky. Little white pellets, dozens and dozens of them, come streaming through the window. They bounce on the countertop and gather in the sink. A few, and then quickly a few more, make it down to the floor and roll and slide their way across the linoleum toward us. Ice. That's what it is. Hail. Mom and Dad and I all seem to recognize this at the same time. And as soon as we do, we all spring into action. The kitchen becomes a swirl of frantic activity. I go straight to the drawer beside the sink and get a roll of duct tape. By the time I turn back around, Mom's got a big black trash bag in her arms. Dad hops up onto the counter and waves at me and Mom over. He grabs the trash bag, spreads it out, and holds it over the damaged window. I tug a length of tape from the roll, tear it free with my teeth, fix it to the frame of the trash bag-covered window, and then tug again at the roll. Within a minute, we've got the bag taped in place. We keep taping, though, especially because the hail is hammering so hard at the black plastic. But it won't break through. It can't. As I learned from Grandpa K, there aren't many problems that can't be solved with a roll of duct tape. Once we're done, Dad climbs down off the counter. Mom goes into the next room, helps Kitty out from under the couch, and brings him in to help clean up the hail-littered floor. Luckily, Grieg stays quiet throughout the whole ordeal. I guess he's tuckered out from his disposal. And my parents, they must still be half asleep, because they seem to think the crash in the cabinet was somehow related to the hailstorm. They don't say a thing about it. They make sure Kitty's lapped up every last ice bit off the floor, then they head upstairs. I wait until I hear their bedroom door close, and only then do I go and get Grieg. He's still in the cabinet, his limbs all contorted, looped through the handle of a pasta pot or holding up a frying pan. He's got a strainer atop his square head like an ugly hat. I help him out as carefully and as quietly as I can, then go to bring him back upstairs. At the last second, though, I grab that roll of duct tape, and safe again in my bedroom, I tear two pieces free. I place one over the speaker that is Grieg's mouth. The other I put over the panel on the back of that upside-down trapezoid. You know, his food cube firing butt. Chapter 24. I don't get another wink of sleep that night. I've got a billion questions bouncing around my head, plus an apparently never not hungry and potentially kind of dangerous robot laying just under my bed. The questions in my head are all about him. Grieg. Where's he from? What else can he do? Is he the world's most amazing gadget, or nothing but a one-trick nuisance? I mean, if all he can do is fit the contents of a refrigerator in his stomach, squash it down until it's the size of an ice cube, then shoot said cube out of his backside fast enough to shatter a kitchen window, why would anyone have bothered to build him? I know my grandpa will have the answers to all of these questions, and that I can ask him tomorrow during my regular Saturday morning visit. But what would involve waiting a whole 24 hours? And to that I say, thanks, but no thanks. By the time my alarm clock goes off, though, I still haven't gotten any closer to answering even a single one of my questions. And honestly, a part of me wants to fake sick just to stay home with Grieg and keep at it. But another part of me wants to talk to Dan about what the robot did in the middle of the night. And yet another part of me, the biggest, I'll admit, just can't wait to see the look on John Henry Knox's face when I tell him and the rest of the engine nerds that I've got my very own walking, talking, comestible, devouring robot. I sit down and I have a talk with Grieg, man to robot, before I leave for the day. I tell him that he has to stay put, that I'll give him some more comestibles when I get home, but that until then, he can't budge from under my bed. I'm not sure if he understands or agrees. When I pull the duct tape off his mouth, all he says is, "I am Grieg." Just in case, I grab some more tape and fix Grieg's right arm to the frame of my bed. Then I hurry out of the house so I don't miss the bus. At school, I find Dan waiting for me at my locker. "How is he?" he says. "How's Greg?" "Grieg," I correct him. "Grieg," he says. "Whatever. How is he?" "How is he?" I say. Do you mean before or after he tried to kill me with a fart bullet?" Dan just blinks at me. So I tell him about the little poop-colored cube that came firing out of Grieg's backside in the middle of the night. "But," Dan says, "that's not..." He looks puzzled, which is what I've been expecting, but he also looks more than a little concerned, scared even. I don't know why, but I try to calm him down. "Listen," I tell him, "I don't know why the guy's got a cannon in his butt. I'm just giving you the facts." Dan doesn't seem all that satisfied with this. He's staring at a patch of empty air in the middle of the hallway. That's when the day's first bell rings. I slap my hand down on Dan's shoulder. "Look, man, it's Friday. Let's just try and get through the day without driving ourselves nuts. Grieg's not going anywhere. I've got him duct taped up under my bed. Come over after school and then we'll have the whole weekend to figure it all out." Dan doesn't say whether he will or won't come over. He just goes on staring at that big hunk of nothing hanging there in the hallway. I give him a shake. "I'll see you at lunch," I say. "Now hurry up. You're going to be late." Chapter 25. When lunchtime finally comes, I'm one of the first engine nerds to get to the empty science room where we usually meet. It was a long morning, and I'm just about bursting with my news about Grieg, but I keep a lid on it because John Henry Knox is late. I ask around to make sure he's in school that day, and one of the guys tells me he just saw him down in the computer lab, and that he's freaking out about that hailstorm from the night before. "Hailstorm?" says Dan beside me. "What hailstorm?" "Last night," I tell him. "We're actually super early this morning, right around the time Grieg tried to take me out with his turd missile." Dan holds up a tuna sandwich. "I'm trying to eat here." I hold up my bagel. "Me too." Dan takes another bite of his sandwich. He chews it thoughtfully for a second, then swallows and says, "I know you don't like him, that he gets on your nerves." There's no need for him to tell me that he's talking about John Henry Knox. I already know. "But what?" I say. "He makes some good points," Dan tells me. "I mean, if you look at his analysis of weather patterns, if you actually listen to his theory about global..." I hold up a hand to stop Dan before he can subject me to any more of John Henry Knox's meteorological mumbo-jumbo. I know I'll get more than enough of it when the kid himself arrives. And speak of the devil, not 2 seconds later, John Henry Knox comes barreling into the room. He's got a laptop under one arm and a bunch of scribbled-on papers under the other. He plops everything down on an empty desk and then right away starts lecturing us. This storm was not forecasted by any other major national weather services nor any local meteorologists. It began slowly with approximately 26 individual pieces of precipitation following within a randomly selected 10-foot by 10-foot patch of pavement per minute for 3 minutes and 11 seconds. Then, in a manner that could only be described as abrupt, the storm grew in strength. It quickly became impossible to get any accurate readings regarding the rate of precipitation. He pauses to take a breath, and before he can start up again, I say, Hey, I got a reading. John Henry Knox whips his head around toward me, narrows his eyes. I can tell he's skeptical, like he knows I might just be messing with him, setting him up for disappointment. He's too curious not to ask. Hesitantly, he says, You do? I nod. I take a sip of my ginger ale and tell him, Sure. A buttload of pieces of falling ice every 0.289 seconds. John Henry Knox scowls at me. That, he says, is not a scientifically sound statement. Maybe not, I admit. And then I shrug. Because John Henry Knox is not a fan of shrugs. They're too vague and unscientific. They always make his lips curl up in disgust. But, I say, I've got something way more exciting than this to talk about. John Henry Knox chuckles. Way more exciting than a potentially apocalyptic megastorm? I grin. I nod. I tell him, I got a robot. Chapter 26. Every one of the engine nerds looks up from his lunch and zeroes in on me. Across from me, Jerry accidentally makes a fist and sends a stream of chocolate milk squirting up into the air. The liquid hits the carpet with a quick series of splats. Then there's silence. Dan, not me, is the one to break it. It's true, he says. John Henry Knox scowls again and says, What do you mean, a robot? That's one of the least descriptive words in the English language. This, of course, isn't true, but John Henry Knox is angry and probably a little jealous, too, and when he's all worked up like this, he doesn't always make the most scientifically sound statements. So I tell him and the rest of the engine nerds all about Grieg, not leaving out a single detail. By the time I'm done, the engine nerds are all staring at me slack-jawed, except for John Henry Knox. He's still scowling. Once again, Dan's the first to speak. I've been thinking, he says. What if the robot was devised as some sort of food storage system? Storage? I say, shaking my head. But he only stored the food for a few hours. Then he fired across my kitchen at 90 miles an hour. Unless, I add a thought, just then floating into my head, unless he wasn't supposed to fire the little food cube thing. Maybe he was just supposed to, I don't know, plop it down or something. Beside me, Dan starts grinning. I don't know why. He looks kind of crazy, though. Tell me where you got it. John Henry Knox, staring at me with a mix of determination and longing in his eyes. I already did, I tell him. The box was just sitting on my porch when I got home yesterday. But who put it on your porch? I don't see any harm in telling him. So I do. My grandpa. Or probably more like someone did it for my grandpa. There's no way he could have lugged that thing around himself. John Henry Knox says, Well, where did he get it? How should I know? It was a present. Ask him. No. Then I will myself. Oh, right, I say, because you know where he lives. John Henry Knox's scowl comes back, and with a vengeance, too. His face looks like a dried, shriveled-up prune. He glares at me like that for several seconds. Then he reaches for his laptop and starts to hammer away at the keyboard. I can only assume that he's trying to hunt down my gift-giving grandpa. But I really couldn't care less, because I've got the one-of-a-kind robot in my bedroom, and in just a few short hours I'll be back there with him, nothing but a glorious, empty weekend stretched out ahead of us. Chapter 27. The afternoon is even harder to get through than the morning. For some reason, I keep wondering whether I should have used a little more duct tape on Grieg's arm and keep imagining what he might do if he managed to get himself free. By the time the day's final bell rings and I go to grab Dan at his locker, I'm desperate to get home to Grieg. But not so desperate that I can take a second to complain to him about John Henry Knox. "Can you believe that kid?" I say as soon as I get over to Dan. "What kid?" he says, dumping a bunch of books and papers into his locker. "John Henry Knox. He's going to try and kidnap my grandpa or something." "No, he's not," Dan says. He gets excited about stuff. It's not a bad thing." "It can be. If it's a bad stuff you're getting excited about, it can be a terrible thing." To bolster my point, I give Dan the first example that springs to mind. "The Aztecs," I tell him. "They were really excited about human sacrifice, and look what that did for them." Dan, now loading up his backpack, stops. "What did it do for them?" I shake my head like it's obvious. "Have you ever met an Aztec? Ever seen one around?" Dan sighs. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." "Oh, really? Is it? Stupider than someone having fit above average amounts of rainfall, concluding that the end of the world is upon us, and spending thousands of his parents' dollars to figure out how to efficiently stockpile food and supplies?" Dan goes back to loading his backpack. "What?" I ask him, since I can tell he's aggravated with me. "I don't get why you're so hard on the guy," Dan says. "I'm not hard on him." "Yeah, you are. Not any harder than he is on me. And you want to know what I don't get? I don't get why you cut the guy so much slack. He thinks he's better than everyone, Dan. I promise you, he thinks he's way smarter than you." Dan slams his locker shut. "He is, Ken. The kid's a genius. Have you ever sat down and read some of what he's been writing? Have you ever taken the time to really look at his calculations? It's amazing stuff." "Whatever, man," I say. "Let's just go. The buses are probably here already, and Grieg's got to be starving by now." I turn around to go, but stop when I realize that Dan's not following me. "Come on," I tell him. But he still doesn't come. And now, instead of angry, he sort of looks nervous. "Let's go," I say. I can't." "What? Why not?" "I've got that project." I think back to yesterday. "The one you said was due today?" Dan starts to gnaw on his lip, which he does only when he's nervous, or when he's lying, or when he's nervous about lying. "No, he says. "It's what?" I ask him. We got an extension," Dan says. Then he goes back to chewing his lip. I can tell he's not going to budge, so I just say, "Whatever," and head to the buses myself. Chapter 28. I have to get off the bus a couple stops early so I can swing by the convenience store. There I spend every last dollar in my wallet, a whole $23 on all kinds of comestibles. Candy bars, cheese doodles, boxes of cereal, packs of gum. I stuff all the junk into my backpack, then I set out for home. It's not too long a walk, only about 10 minutes. 7 if I speed walk, which obviously I do. I spend most of that time turning a single thought over in my head. How can a kid as brilliant as Dan Drubel be so dumb as to believe John Henry Knox's kooky ideas? It doesn't make any sense, which is why, by the time I'm turning onto my street, I'm still no closer to an answer. So I decide I'll deal with it later. I think about Grieg instead. About me and Grieg and me, the two of us, hanging out, eating like crazy, building catapults out of chopsticks. In the future, maybe lots of people will have robots for friends. Maybe I'm just ahead of my time. And Grieg put himself together, meaning he's got construction skills, and meaning he can probably be taught other skills too, like how to actually have a conversation, how to tease and joke and mess around. And the farts? The nearly lethal method of disposal? It isn't really that bad. He must have eaten 50 pounds of food the day before, and all of that only added up to a single square turd. That's manageable, right? By the time I get inside and I'm on my way across the kitchen, I've got it all figured out. I just need to make a schedule. to map out exactly how much food goes into a cube, and when Grieg's most likely to dispose of it, then I can. My thoughts are cut off by an unfamiliar sound. It's sort of followed by several more. It's coming from above me, from upstairs. I hurry out of the kitchen, down the hallway, and just as I'm reaching the top of the stairs, I hear something else. It's Grieg. Disposal complete. I don't even want to go into my bedroom, but I know I can't just stand out there in the hallway avoiding it forever. So I step inside and immediately see what I was afraid I would. Only, it's worse. Instead of 5 or 6 perfectly square holes in my wall, there are about 30. Bits of painted wood and plaster lie on the carpet beneath the damage. A cloud of white dust hangs in the air, tumbling and turning in the afternoon sun. Grieg's got a strip of torn duct tape hanging from his wrist, and looking at him and at the damage he's done to my wall, I feel like the dumb one. And all of a sudden, another thought worms its way into my brain. I'm wondering again if Grieg really is the world's greatest gift, the coolest toy imaginable, something worth bragging about to the rest of the engine nerds, because right then he feels a lot more like a responsibility, like a maniac little cousin that I somehow got stuck babysitting, not a new best friend. Because a friend is someone who gets you out of trouble, not someone who gets you into trouble, right?